for instance, Turks and Caicos, lovely island. Some of the best facilities that I've seen in the Caribbean, I've seen in Turks and Caicos, the AstroTurf, the beach soccer facility. A lot of Caribbean islands don't have that.
Welcome back to Pushing Your Peers Podcast, the number one podcast in the region for living a progressive and happier life. On this episode, I'm joined by Jherard Morris-Sealy, a passionate storyteller in the world of media and sports journalism. From covering the Olympics to advocating for youth voices in Caribbean sports, Jherard dives into his journey, the challenges facing regional athletes, and what it really takes to succeed behind the scenes in media. We talk about consistency, courage, and community, plus his creative vision for a brand new holiday that celebrates inclusivity and movement. This is an episode you don't want to miss. Sit back, relax, and let's get ready to push some peas. Ladies and gentlemen, Jherard Morris-Sealy, welcome to Pushing Your Peers Podcast, man. This has been long overdue. I met Jherard a few months ago. We commentated the inter-high school championship games, and let me tell you, it was a well-spent 3 days.
Absolutely.
I'm hugely grateful for all the knowledge he imparted on me. I'm looking forward to doing it again with him in the near future. Yeah, for sure, in the near future. But I want to touch on your journey into media. Tell me initially, how did that come about? Because it's not something we grew up hearing in the Caribbean. That I want to get into media. Mostly our parents say doctor, lawyers,
That's
something along those lines. So tell me initially, how did that come about?
Yeah, well, I actually didn't have that experience of my parents pushing me to do law or do medicine or doing accounts and finance. Even though my mother did work in the medical field, she was a pharmacist. My father was a businessman. So you would think that you would be pressured as a in a Caribbean household to do one of those
Yeah.
things to try to make a living. But I always had this fascination by media, for media, about media. Um, as a young athlete, I always found it quite interesting how stories would be told on us, how we would be able to communicate our feelings and how the events happen in matches for us as well. If we didn't perform well, we were forced really because I had a coach when I was playing junior cricket by the name of Richard Clark. He would make us do post-match presentations every game. So that's where basically that love for telling the story came about. I have always had this thirst for knowledge for as long as I can remember. I always wanted to know what made things happen the way they do and why they would happen a certain way. So everything about the structure of the government, everything about schools, history. I was always interested in those things, current affairs, for as long as I can remember. I always wanted to be in the know. My mother always commended me for it. She said, Jherard is not the type of person when you turn on TV will watch a comedy or watch a horror or whatever. He would always want to watch a documentary or a Olympic. So I just knew that I had a thirst for knowledge. And then it just so happened that when I grew older, a teacher of mine at school, she pulled me aside one day and she said to me, she said, Jherard, you need whatever you choose to do in your life, make sure it is something that you can use your voice. And I think that was a sign for me to go ahead into media. But because I was so heavily involved in sports, I knew that if I didn't make it as a professional, I wanted to be the person telling these stories, writing these stories, telling the audience how things are happening at the events, why they're happening this way, how they've come about, and give them all the information that they will need to know and enjoy these things more, tell the stories that they will not necessarily be privy to without us being around to tell them as journalists. So I always had a respect as well for the job that the journalist does, who of informing the public of things. informing the public of the critical things, whether they are happy, they're sad, whether they're um, controversial, whether they're quite straightforward. They always kept us in the know. They always keep us in the know. And I always had that respect for journalists and what they do. And I just wanted to be a part of that circle, and I wanted to be able to bring those experiences as well. And to me, journalists, at least when I was growing up and even now, I always saw journalists, broadcasters, writers. I always found those people and saw them as great role models. And they were quite superheroes to me because they were doing things and getting to talk to people and telling their stories like they were friends. And quite frankly, if you're seeing your favorite person, your favorite celebrity, your favorite athlete, your favorite writer, your favorite singer, something, sitting with a journalist and just having a conversation with them, and that journalist is not starstruck and knows exactly what to ask that person and how to get the stories out of them and how to make them laugh and make you enjoy an experience with that person. I always knew that that is something that I wanted to do, and that is why I chose to pursue journalism and become a broadcaster myself, because media is powerful.
Amazing. Now you get on this path
Yeah,
and you somehow make it to one of the biggest media sports platforms in the Caribbean.
yeah.
How did that come about?
All right. So I started doing a little bit of work in Barbados. I worked at CBC TV 8 in Barbados. It's a local TV station, the only TV station in the country that is owned by state owned. Um, I came to Jamaica in 2019, January 2019. I was 19 at the time, going on to 20. And I came to study journalism here at Karamak, University of West Indies, Mona.
Mm.
Now, my second year, we are required to do an internship at any media house. It could be in Jamaica or elsewhere. We weren't limited to Jamaica. But my lecturer at the time actually reached out to me, and he said to me, you know, Jherard, I have an opportunity for you, and I want you to send your resume, and I think you would be good for this job, because I always expressed during classes my love for sports. I always wrote about sports, even though I was not limited to sports. I always, like I said, had that craving for current affairs as well, and politics
Yeah.
and whatever else. But I chose to write about sports because it was a field that I know that I would have entered into professionally. And there was no secret that I was a fan of sports, and I was an athlete as well, because I was representing me in volleyball at the same time. But this was during COVID, of course, and we had ceased to be playing games, but I was still finding angles about stories of sports that I was writing and submitting in class, and he found it quite interesting. So I did submit my resume to him, and he passed it on. I had no idea where the resume was going. I had no clue, but I got a phone call by my supervisor, who's no longer here, and I heard, "Hi, this is Sports Max calling, and I saw your resume, and I want you to know that we are offering you a job as a writer for our website." I said, I looked at the phone and I was like, "What? Sports?" I had no idea that this is where my resume was going. Um, Mind you, at the time, this is a downtime for me, because my mother had just passed away, and it was a lifelong dream of mine, and I always expressed it to her to work at Sportsman. So now that I got the opportunity,
Wow.
and she wasn't there to express to enjoy it with me, but that's fine. I feel as if she was guiding me into this route.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I started out at Sportsmax as a content writer for the website. I used to write on JPL, which is the Jamaica Premier League football here. I started as well doing volleyball, some overseas tournaments as well. And I covered, at the time there was some women's cricket going on. I covered that, and I also covered the Olympic Games. as a writer. That was my first Olympic Games, Tokyo 2021. So from there, Ricardo Chambers, when my internship came to an official end, Ricardo said to me, I think you're a great worker and you know your stuff, and I think I need you back on my team. So that's how I made a transition from writing to television. I
Mm,
started with Ricardo and Donald Oliver. Two of them took me and they groomed my skills and they ensured that I was voicing and training and learning how to do broadcasting, how to project, how to enunciate, and of course, how to tell stories for television, because writing stories is different to producing stories, and you have to tell a story. You have to find ways, creative ways to tell these stories and give these experiences in a way that you would not do so for an article. So they made sure that I learned the craft and they helped me develop, and they were so impressed already with how quickly I was learning and what I was showing them based on the things that they would have seen, the work that they would have seen me do before. And they decided to bring me to the television space, and from there it took off. I really, really did get my first opportunity on screen for sports when it came to schoolboy football. Um, that same season, well, the first year since COVID, which would have been 2021 September, it was started, and that's when I got my big break. I did an audition. The audition, I remember, I was jittery beyond control. I was nervous because not because I didn't think I could do it, but because it was like the opportunity is finally here. And I remember Amoy, who would have given me my first opportunity, she was my first supervisor. She said to me, she said, nerves are good. She said, nerves are just an overwhelming feeling of excitement. So
mhm.
if you're nervous, that means you really want to do it.
Yes.
And that every time I do a broadcast or have something to do and I get nervous, I remember what she said to me and I embraced it with a smile. So 2021 came, I did the audition, got the job to do hosting for schoolboy football, and the rest is, as they say, history. Since then, I've done schoolboy football, I've done Commonwealth Games, I've done Jamaica Premier League, I've done the Olympic Games. So yeah, that's how I got my start. Literally through the help of my lecturer who said he saw the opportunity and he thought I would be a good fit, and here I am today.
You talked about the Olympics. Tell us about your experience covering and this is the recent Olympics last year, correct?
Yeah, yes. I did
So,
two Olympics. I did one as a writer, one as a broadcaster.
and the broadcaster one is the one you would have attended in person.
Well, no. So what I did was from our headquarters, I would have done the continuation between events. Of course, we will have our team on the ground who would have been filming and sending back our features and stuff. My
Okay.
job would have been to ensure that our viewers kept track of what we were showing, when we were showing it, and who was competing throughout the Caribbean. On the mornings, I did a show with Jehu Gordon and Anil Roberts, Don, and as well as can't remember her name, Janelle Atkinson, um, for our Caribbean viewers to just bring them up to speed on how we were doing in the events during the day.
But tell us about that experience, covering such a high caliber game and bringing that information to us here in the Caribbean.
Trust me, it is tasking. I don't think I slept 5 hours
I can
for
imagine
for
that.
those 2 weeks, those 17 days. And they're grueling 17 days. You have to keep track of every event, even when you're not on duty. You have to ensure that you know what's going on. Um, but the work doesn't start at that point in time when the games start. Your
Mm,
work starts a year before. Sometimes the moment you are told that you are going to be doing this broadcast
mm.
or you're going to be a part of this production, the work begins. Uh, but I enjoyed it. Why? Because it was so wholesome. It was so enlightening to see all of these athletes competing for the Caribbean. I know that we've paid a lot of attention to the last 10 days, which would be, of course, the track and field
Yes.
events. But before that, we have to keep our audience engaged. We have to
Yes.
remind them that we have athletes not only in athletics, we have athletes in table tennis, we have some in badminton, we have others competing in gymnastics, there's some that are swimming. So really, the Caribbean audience should be paying attention from the first day. So what we had to do now was find a way to make them interested, make them want to
Mhm.
watch. And I found it quite enlightening to find these ways to do it. As a broadcaster, you need to know what you're looking for and what the audience would want to see. So
Right.
even though the athletes from the Caribbean may not go to a final in wrestling or may not go to a boxing final and win a gold medal or whatever, they do well. They do well. So for me, it was quite great, quite heartening to go through the long list of athletes for all 17 days, to be up all those sleepless nights trying to, well, my shift was overnight because, in
Right.
Paris is 7 hours ahead. So when they're sleeping, when we're sleeping, and mind you, even though I'm not sleeping as well, a lot of our viewers are not sleeping because they're watching us.
Mhm.
And it's quite surprising the numbers that we would be clocking overnight
That's
of
crazy.
people, yeah, people watching these events. And so I found it quite interesting. I didn't see it as, it was grueling, yes, but I didn't see it as boring or I didn't see it as excessive. I didn't see it as tough because it was something that I love doing. Watching all the Caribbean athletes compete, bringing all the stories to them, to our viewers, and ensuring that they had a taste of Caribbean flavor
Right.
in Olympics.
Gerard, you've covered multiple Caribbean countries. We've even been to the Turks and Caicos Islands and
Yeah,
seen some of the talent we have here, right?
yeah,
Where do you see sports in the region currently? I mean, we've seen the rise and it seems like the decline in Jamaica.
yeah.
We see St. Lucia's is making headways. I saw the athlete from Trinidad and Tobago recently, Richards.
Mhm.
He's put down a phenomenal performance. But overall, where do you see sports currently in the Caribbean?
Well, that's a great question. And I think we have the talent here. There's no doubt about it. We are at the junior level the most dominant set of people in the region. Why? Because naturally, our athletes at that age are just better. Um, you would find in sports like football and cricket, our younger athletes go overseas and they do well. They're headways above others. That's because the natural talent is fine. It's good. We have that on this side of the world, no problems. Where we do have that problem now is when we transition into professionals.
Mm,
Simply because at the junior level, because we've done it so long with limited resources, we believe that we can do it as adults with that same level of resource. And it's not capable. It's not. Some people have been able to do it. They've been able to make miracles, make bread out of stone. But if we want to be dominant, have that same level of dominance, have that same type of championships mentality at the younger state that we do have at the younger level, we need to up our game when it comes to treating our athletes as pros, allowing them to work as pros, work out as pros, rehabilitate as pros,
mm,
eat as pros, train like pros. We have so many facilities around that need upgrading. Um, for instance, Turks and Caicos, lovely island. Some of the best facilities that I've seen in the Caribbean, I've seen in Turks and Caicos, the AstroTurf, the beach soccer facility. A lot of Caribbean islands don't have that. Now, some of these stadiums in the Caribbean as well, Kirani Stadium in Grenada, phenomenal stadium. Hazy Crawford Stadium in Trinidad and Tobago just got some upgrades. Phenomenal stadiums again. But a lot of these stadiums don't have places for these athletes to feel comfortable and do their rehabilitation. A lot of the gyms are outdated. There's no science behind it. They don't have access to some of the best trainers. They have to go overseas. Now, the reason why Jamaicans are so good and Jamaica has a spring factory, even despite all of their struggles, because the clubs here align themselves with schools, align themselves with universities, and allow who they now would have access to a proper track. They have access to a proper gym. They have access to um, dietitians, sports psychologists, and of course, not to mention the coaching is phenomenal. Some of the best track and field coaches are here. Some of the best football coaches in the Caribbean are here. Couple those things to get together, and then you get an athlete from Jamaica who dominates. You get a Leon Bailey who plays for Aston Villa at the EPL. A DeJohn Richards who plays for Chelsea, signed to Chelsea. So we need to understand that even though we are great at the younger level, we need to do things at that level, the professional level, when they can transition from being under 21, under 23, under 19 to being pros. As long as we can have that, as long as we can make all those things work, as it stands, we can't do it. We can go to another level. Julian Alfred, Shelley Fraser Price, Usain Bolt, all the Elaine Thompson era, what they have in common, they're world champions. They're Olympic champions. So they couldn't have done this without proper training facilities, without proper resources. So even though we're good enough to compete because of our natural talent and because of our mentality and our will to win, we need to do more. And so I say all that to basically answer your question and say we are not at the level that we should be in the Caribbean. We can definitely do a lot more to make sports more successful in the Caribbean.
You know, we recently had huge criticism in the Turks and Caicos Islands. Not sure if you saw it. We are our athletes went off and we got no medals, and so a lot of criticism was directed at the sports commission. And I think the director recently put a brilliant press release highlighting the fact that this is a small country.
Yes.
You know, I mean, you mentioned us earlier having some brilliant facilities. Yes, we have the facilities, but we don't have the volume of a Jamaica, the volume of a Trinidad. And I
Mhm.
think that's something that uh, we may have to look into in regards to, okay, maybe we can assist the Jamaicans or other
Yes.
Caribbean countries with some
Mhm.
sort of sports tourism interregionally, because I think the government is looking at it from the U.S. and Canada. Oh, yeah, that's
Mhm.
cool. Yeah, yeah, U.S. dollars, Canadian dollars, cool. But what about regionally? You know, we can actually create a hub here for regional athletes to come here and develop themselves. So that just came into my mind as you spoke.
Leo, that's a great point because it's something that I have pushed and I've talked about many times in the office. Uh, I when I came back from Turks and Caicos, I said it to some of my colleagues. I said, we have mine. Funny enough, we were just completing talks about the beach soccer tournament that was done in Bahamas, the CONCACAF beach soccer tournament. And I said, you know, I just came back from Turks and Caicos Islands and they have a phenomenal beach soccer field there. And it is not just a field like you just take up some beach sand and you just put it there. You it is groomed. You get a feeling, and you can play
Yes.
and train at that facility. I said, why not have a Jamaican team travel to the Turks and Caicos to train? Why are we so hell bent on sending our athletes to Europe? Why do we have to send our athletes to the US? Why are we not looking around our own region to see who has the best facilities and what? Why can't we send some of our cricketers from Turks and Caicos Islands to Barbados to play some games, to train for a while and come back? These are the things that would help us not only as individual islands, but as a Caribbean on a whole to perform better because we do have the talent here
Yes.
who can push each other to the different levels. And as not, we're not good at everything, but we're all good at something.
Yes.
So why not make the most of that?
Work together. You know, you special. This country specialize in this specialize in that. We
Exactly.
make it work.
Exactly.
Gerard,
Exactly.
I just want to thank you for coming on. I mean, this has been, I mean, the time goes by so fast, right? But I
Yeah.
still have a few more questions I want to ask you. And, you know,
Mhm.
there are people that's looking to walk your path,
Yeah.
get into media. What advice would you share with persons wanting to take the same path you took in getting into media?
Yeah. First thing, talk to people. Get in the habit of talking. Get in the habit of reading. Check his stories. Watch the news. Listen to the radio. Those are things that would help you get into media and be willing to learn. Ask questions. I
Mm,
always say there's no such thing as a stupid question. All questions have answers, even if the answer is negative. So if you get a negative answer, don't feel a way about it. That's just part of asking questions. Um, find your own opportunities, like I had to do. Do a lot of your own research. Um, and then you'll find that once you do the heavy lifting, you will find people in your corner, especially if they believe in your talent and you show your talent, you will definitely get the opportunities. Media has opportunity after opportunity. And I know when I say media, a lot of people are thinking about radio, television,
yes.
newspaper. No, media goes way beyond that. There is film, there is new media, which is online. There are podcasts, as we are doing right now, Leo, and you're showing the youngsters and those watching Pushing a Piece what they are capable, what is out there, what they can do. Just get into it. You don't have to start fancy. Get a phone and record yourself. Get a phone and record someone individual and write your stories or put them out there. It doesn't have to be top notch from the time you start. People love information. As long as you're giving them the information, they will tune in no matter how you look. Event just start, and when people believe in your vision and they see you doing your thing, you will grow, grow, grow. And I want to see many more youngsters in Turks and Caicos doing media because there is a market for it. There is a market for it. Even if it is not in your own country, that market is out there. People want to know what is going on in your country. So even if the locals don't want to know, people like me, I
Outside.
want to know. All right, so just get started. That's all you have to do.
Gerard, I was smiling and throwing my hands up because I always tell people that
Yeah,
just start.
just start.
You don't have to have a big fancy camera or anything. You can. I recently tell someone maybe an investment of 300 US can get you
Yeah,
started with the podcast.
absolutely,
And your
absolutely,
smartphone. Like these cameras are phenomenal.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
you don't have to go big to start,
Mhm.
as long as you, and here's why I always just tell them,
Yeah,
consistent.
there you go. Be consistent. As long as you're
Because
posting regularly or you're writing regularly or whatever, trust me, your audience is going to grow.
yes. Gerard, I just want to thank you. But you wouldn't be a guest on my show if you didn't push your peers.
That's right.
So any word that begins with the letter P that has been transformational to your journey, it can be one word or multiple words. You now have the platform to push your P's.
Passion, participation,
Mhm.
professionalism. Those three transformed my life.
Touch on them. Touch on them just briefly.
Well, passion for what everything that I do, everything that I love, which is why I'm here. Participation in anything that I could find that is wholesome, and professionalism, because some days you just don't feel like you want to do it, or there are days that everything is going wrong and you're just not in the best mood, but you have to stay professional in every circumstance and deliver. So those three.
Thank you for pushing your peers, Gerard. Now
Thank you.
it's time for the spin-off question now.
All right.
Now, if you could invent a new holiday,
Mm.
what would it celebrate and
Mhm.
what strange traditions would it
Mm.
involve?
A new holiday. Probably moving around day
Okay.
to celebrate just, yeah, just being able to move around. And I don't mean move around physically as walking and running or whatever. I mean, you can just be able to push it because, we want to be inclusive. Those are physical challenges. We'll still be able to participate because regardless of not having feet or not being able to walk or whatever, they can still move around. They're
Yes.
moving. Um, and it would be to just commemorate and celebrate the fact that we can experience life, enjoy the world, and probably would have nobody go to work, of course. No,
Yeah.
that's a public holiday, day off.
That
Um, but a strange tradition, maybe, hmm, maybe doing a sport that you've never done before
or move around day.
on move around day.
Okay. That
Yeah.
sounds like a deal.
Maybe it's not so strange, but hey, we can work on it.
Yeah, we'll work on that. Gerard, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Do you have any final words before we wrap up the show?
Yes. Uh, I want to say that no matter what you choose to do in life, it may not, I know that I'm pushing for media, but it may not be media, whether it may be writing a book, whether it may be selling, being a chef, as I had a chef in your last episode, whether it be construction, whatever you choose to do in life, just know that this is your path and nobody can tell you how to do your life. Just taking the positivity, wipe out the negativity, but understand the difference between good criticism and bad criticism. Those people will, of course, tell you, do this, do that, but at the end of the day, only you know what's best for you.
Mhm.
And regardless of the consequences, regardless of what people may think, do what's best for you. And that's how you would push your piece.
Phenomenal way to end the show, man. Ladies and gentlemen, Jherard Morris-Sealy, Sports Mac journalist, and a person who's going places.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
coming on. And we'll see you guys next week on Pushing Your Peace podcast.